I haven't got a microphone. So, if you're already scrubbing back through this and you're not sure what's going on, hello, I'm Chris, and I am going to be teaching you how to do things. Now, at the minute I've got this set up for some other things, so yeah, I'll have this instead. Copy. I'm just going to get things ready before I start, which is why I'm doing this. Really don't need it that big. I'll stick my big grinny face down here in the corner. There we are. That works for me. Right. So now I can see what's happening. Now, while I'm waiting to begin, I'll be beginning in about 7 minutes. I mentioned in the post I made on Facebook, but this is where we start. This is our archviz interior. Now, I've got a couple of additional bits loaded into my scene as well. So I've got some people, and I've made a couple of minor changes regarding the flower pots, or these plant pots, or whatever they are, on top of the table. But it's nothing madly important, so knock yourself out if you want to make changes. The people I put in were from a NPC animation pack. I can't share it because it was purchased, but good little pack anyway. If I just have a look, I think it's in my library. Search vaults. Everyday mocap, that's the one I used, so just in case you're wondering. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up archviz interior because I need it for what I'm doing. Okay. Now I want to have a look at Google Docs. I've got 3 monitors, so things get a little bit mad. I'm also going to be taking notes on another screen again, so I will need a pen and probably a coffee. I don't want Steam doing anything because I don't have my Oculus set up at the moment. I've got it unplugged deliberately. Right, now, maybe a coffee. A coffee would be nice. God, look at that. Flipping dreadnought's fantastic. Right, coffee. not really expecting anyone to kind of turn up for this, but if they do, that's nice. I've got here's the law messaging me. My son's informing me there's been some lockdown changes. Work from home if you can, says Minister. Oh, we're at alert level 4. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot happening. Okay, so this looks like a good place to start. I know that there's not really anyone here, that's cool. I just need to practice this. Okay, so hello, that would be where I always start. So I'm Chris, and it is damn good to meet you all. Now this is the architectural visualization material, level that is basically comes with Unreal Engine in the marketplace, and I've chosen this as a good starting place for us. Now I want to get rid of some of these things, so I'm going to get rid of new material parameter collection and post process because I don't really need them. Okay, off you go. And this will give me a chance to work on some new things, do some cinematics, and all of that cool stuff. Now, deleting stuff does take a minute or two in Unreal Engine, and that's primarily because of the way that all the files and project files are kind of linked so that it needs to check all of its dependencies. So just give that a minute. It's a chance to enjoy a delicious coffee. There we go, that didn't take too long. Now, I was mentioning the couple of minor differences and changes I've got in my scene, so I'll talk about those now. If you're wondering about the frame rate, just click here in the top left arrow on your viewport, and we can show FPS. And as you see at the minute, mine is not nice. But then again, I am using an old 1060 graphics card, so I know 1060 isn't particularly old, but when it comes to visualization, it is. Now, as you can see, our scene is very blown out, very, very washed out. Okay, that's the first thing that we need to look at. The second thing I'd like to look at is our cinematics over here. And I have a camera flyby and a camera panning, and I'm going to delete both of those. So those are gone. And what I'm doing is I'm just getting everything ready for what I want here. Now, this is rendering part 1. So I'm just going to double click on new map, and then on rendering baked, and just see what I've got. See if I've got a slightly, yeah, I think this one's a little bit more friendly for what I need. Okay. Now inside my scene, I'm just going to look for the things that I need. Now I don't have any cameras, that's good. My lighting, all of my cameras, all of my lighting at the minute is set up to be dynamic. So if I click on these are rectangular lights, you'll see they're movable, not stationary. If I was to change these all to stationary, which I can do by just selecting them all and then changing static. Now if I just change them to stationary, by the way, you'll notice you get an X through some of them. I need to actually move them to static. And I'll change my point light as well, so my point light should also be static, and my directional light can definitely be static. Now we do have these people over here moving around quite a lot, and they've got a lot of shadow, and I'm going to suspect this directional light is probably going to be what's driving that. Now then, I'll turn that off and on just to get a look at it. Seems okay. Let's just return its luminance. So I'm going to change this to movable. Okay. Actually, I'll change it to stationary. If I change it to stationary, I'll get lighting from movable objects. So what that means is these guys, when they're moving around and walking around and doing stuff, we'll still get some decent lighting for them. Okay, now I'm going to play this level in the active viewport. And I can see that, yep, they're moving just fine. Our mobile's moving okay. Everything seems okay. Right. Now, what I want to do is I want to bake my lighting quickly. So if I go to build, lighting quality, I'm going to drop this down just to 1 bounce and build. Now I know there's not many people watching, well there's no one watching, and I know there's no one really paying attention, but this is my chance really to just really practice and get this a little bit tidier. Right, map check complete, blah 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 blah, overridden, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to look at this. Now I know that's no baking. Okay. I probably shouldn't have really used this scene. I'm wondering if it might be better using a different one while I've got a chance. I might like to. Or at least mess around with some of the lighting myself. Especially as I could make this part of the lesson, I suppose. Okay, so this is the part where I strip out the lights. Okay, so I'm literally just stripping out every single light, including our rectangle lights. And that leaves us with just the directional light, which I'm going to kill as well. Okay, as you can see, my FPS is now suspiciously much higher. And rendering baked. Now I'm going to go to File and right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put an empty point light right in the middle of my scene, just here. Now I can see what that's trying to do straight away, rather interestingly. So what I want to do is I want to find my post-process volume. Here it is here, and I'm going to unbind it. So unbound. Yeah, my post-process volume is doing a lot in this scene, it looks like. I think I've probably made the mistake of, I'll change bloom from convolution. And turn this on again. Right, so bloom. standard. Yeah, I'm just going to go through these, change my thresholds. I don't need to change my scales. The metering mode is auto exposure basic now. I can adjust or de-adjust that. The minimum and maximum EVs. So I'll just change those. Obviously, if you know about cameras, you'll know that we can do all sorts of crazy things with our EV value. I'm not using a dirt mask. I notice the shadow gain's been adjusted, so I'll just swap that back. And the slope's been adjusted on here, so I can just turn that off. I don't have any post-processing materials going in at the minute. Right, so indirect lighting illumination. Change that back to 1. Final ray tracing global illumination. Disable. Maximum bounces sample per pixel 4. Motion blur teeny bit. Reflections, set them back to screen space. And intensity to 100. So all I'm doing really is just pulling in everything as a very basic. In fact, what might be easier is just killing the old post-process volume and going down to my recently placed volumes, post-process, and drag that in. Right, I can see there is an awful lot of blooming going on in my scene. Probably coming from this light here. No, it isn't. Wow. It's my environment. It must be my environment. Let's have a look at this. So, my sky sphere. The sun brightness, speed, blah blah blah. I don't have a directional light actor to override anything. So all I'm doing is I'm just looking at the contents of my scene, incidentally, just in case you were wondering, which I very much doubt you are. And I'm going to just grab a light, and I want a directional, and then I'm going to select that from our background geometry. Sorry, no, not my background geometry, Jesus, what am I doing? I mean from my sky sphere. Okay, and this will give us our basic internal light, which is now linked. Yeah, I can see where the problems were with this scene. Okay, so this gives me a chance to do a little bit of cleanup on it then. So, questions 1. Should I clean it up or should I use a different scene? I personally think I should use a different scene. I'll have a look and see. I've got some time. So, file, new level. Default. Certainly not as blown out as the previous scene was. Okay. I'm going to call this the workroom. Right. So I'm going to create myself a very simple rendering space using this. And I need to turn my snaps on. Now this is mostly because I really hate working with other people's stuff. Okay, so when you're working with other people's stuff, even tutorial files, I tend to find that there's a lot of things in my scene that I don't really want. So I'm going to just make myself this very simple layout here. Okay, and then I'm going to go down to Control S just to save it. content, and I want to go to my starter content, which hopefully should be here. Okay, no starter content in this one. Good times. It's a shame because I really needed it. Okay, so best thing to do there is just bring some across from another level. Library. There'll be some materials too. So I want to go to my content in the second one I've loaded up, go to my starter content, right click, and I want to migrate that. I'm going to migrate all of this stuff to the content folder for ArchViz Interior. Select and off it goes. Obviously I didn't have that over there. Content migration completed successfully. Perfect. Okay. Now I'm not going to make my students build the scene, I don't think. So what I'm going to do is I'll build it myself, which will not take long. So I want a simple living room with windows, doors, and a couple of little corridors coming off it. So architecture. And I'll go with high or low ceiling. Let's see. High, so old fashioned. And I'm going to rotate that. Okay, now I need some walls, so I'm going to rotate this exactly 90 degrees. And I'm using the 400s, so if I select this and then right click and replace, and what I want to do first is I just want to get all this kind of the way I want it. So what am I doing? I'm replacing with, there we are. Now I'm going to copy this across to here. Okay, so this gives us our narrow corridor coming in, which is what I'd expect. Okay, so that gives us these three here. Now I want to build out my lounge a little bit, so I'm going to just rotate this and just bring my corner in like so. Now I'm going to assume the window is the far end of the flat, so that's what I'm going to use, and I'm going to have this as being a kind of a largish room. Hello to the two people who are watching, I hope you're well. I've just gone in and I'm resetting my scene because part of the issue that I've got is I'm teaching using the basic scene inside of the architectural visualization internal thing, and I don't really want to use that, even though it's set up nicely. It's not a great way for me to be able to teach with, so what I'm doing is I'm quickly setting up a room that I can use that's more suited to what I need. So, just in case you're wondering. Now I want to add some lighter spaces because obviously this is going to be pretty dark if I'm not careful. So I'm going to bring this over to here. I realise... oh, hello Chris. Hello Carl, sorry. Ah, I haven't seen. How are you doing, Carl? Hope you're keeping well. Yeah, I haven't updated it. I should have done, shouldn't I? God, I really forgot. Hang on. So this is Unreal Engine Lighting Lesson Test Preparation Update. Thank you, Carl. I have updated it. and hopefully it will update onto the thing. Right, I'm just bringing this across. All I'm doing is, basically I've got my scene that I was using for ArchViz prep, and I spent basically all weekend kind of tidying it up and making it the way I wanted it, and then I realised I didn't like it at all, because what I'm doing is basically dancing to someone else's tune. Now this is a scene that was obviously made by someone who isn't me, and so all their different switches are in place. I obviously adjusted it for what I wanted, but it wasn't fully adjusted for what I wanted. So I want to really just make an apartment so that I've got more complete customization over what I'm making. Now, all I'm doing is basically just dragging in walls, and I've talked before with my students about some of the problems inherent in this, including some of the problems like we will get lighting artifacts where the walls meet, and I'm going to cover those a lot using anything I can find really, so I'm not too concerned. I'm just eyeballing my scene, making sure I'm not screwing things up. Okay, and I'm going to move this across. Hope you're well, by the way, Carl. And I just want to make the kind of thing that we'd expect in a simple apartment, so I'm just using my architectural blocks just to block myself off a very, very simple area like this. And I'm going to replace wall 200, 200, so right click and replace. And I'm going to decrease Z value to 0.5. Hang on a second, I need to unlink those so everything else can be 1. Okay, so bring that up to there. Right, now we have this, which gives us a nicer shape here, breaks it up a little bit. Okay, and now for doors, I'm going to put another door here, and I'm going to put a door here so they're staggered. I don't know if people still stagger doors like this, but I'm going to. So I'm going to replace with. Okay, so ooh, those are too small. I'll replace them with the 400. Okay, let's have a look at this. Very, very big area, which works for me just fine. Now over here, where we have our rear windows, I'm going to swap these out. That's the glass man you can hear, taking away our recycling, because we live in a modern world. So I'm just replacing my selected actors here, and I'll change their height to 0.5. And then, because this is a modern building, I'm going to bring these up to about here. Nice, okay. And let's have another one over here as well. So I'm going to change this, give it a 0.5, and then raise it up. Okay, that's looking fine as far as I'm concerned. Now, the floor is offset a bit wrongly for what I need. So what I need to do is emphasize that this is kind of a high-rise flat or whatever it is. So I'm going to move the floor so that it's just cornered to about there. The good thing about that is that I now see I don't even need these three. And I'm not going to do anything over this side, so the lighting is just going to come in from two sides, there and there. And this seems a little bit rough in how it's been done, but that's fine. What I might do is I think I'm going to move this one and this one, so I'm going to swap them. So this is going to become 400 by 400, and this one can become a door, and then I'll bring this forward, and I can bring this to a slightly uneven pitch maybe. There we go. Just add a little bit of oddity to our room, which I think is always nice. No light leaks, none that I can see. Great. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to put in some pillars, and I'm going to use these just as standard separators. So I'm going to just bring this forward a little bit at the top, and I'm going to change my snap to 100. Okay, and the only reason I'm doing that is just to give myself a quick guideline. Now I'm going to drop my pillar in. As you can see, it's too big, so I want this 0.8% of its actual. And I'm going to change my snaps to 5. Bring that up. In. There we go. Now I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to make another copy. And one more, which I'm going to place embedded in the corner, and another one over here. So that way we're getting a kind of modern apartment look. And I know this isn't about building stuff, but I want a place that I can work from that looks a bit different to the one that I was using. Because I liked the tutorial, but on the other hand, I wanted to adapt it the second I started using it. There we go. Now then. Get this lined up on the edge and then bring it in. There we go. Okay, quick build so I can just see how it looks. Yeah, that's okay. Clean, certainly. Teeny bit claustrophobic in areas, but I'll live with that. Okay, now door frames. At the minute our door frames are bloody horrible. I'll see if there's anything better in our ArchViz stuff. So that's my assets. Sample level. Don't want that. Meshes. Here we go. Let's see what we've got. Well, we've got blinds. Blinds are good. Books. Books are good. Bookcases. Have we got a door? I don't know if we've got a door. We have not got a door. Interesting. So in that case, building meshes. Ah, here we are. SM door frame, inner and outer. That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to grab all 3 of those and just grab them down like so. And they're huge. These are huge. Like far too huge. I think they must have like really made this overscale. Bizarre. Okay, so what I need to do is probably make these about half their normal size. I suspect if they're about that, they might well fit. There we go. I wonder if they were just exaggerating the light heavily in this scene. I bet they were. That would make more sense, really. Okay, so here's our door frame, and I'm going to have this just on the outside of here. Just line it up. And my door itself, which is obviously a little bit too big. But I'm just doing smoke and mirrors, remember? So I'm going to bring that to there. Okay. And I'm going to duplicate this door, so if I just get this and this. Interestingly, the material for the door is not attached, which is why it's doing this. Okay, that looks fine. I'll do another alt and move. Good thing is that I've got a nice free day today when I can really focus and concentrate on this. And like I say, I know that I was supposed to be teaching, you know, all these camera pans and stuff, but I don't like the scene that I was doing it with at all. If I don't like it, how can I expect the students to? Okay. That's cool. So now I need to go to my materials, presumably. I should have door. Yep, here we are. White door. Lovely. So I'm just going to give it white doors. So someone's obviously been busy with the old white paint. That works for me. Okay, next. I'm going to pull my geometry up to make a rough ceiling. So I've got my floor here, which is about to become my ceiling. There we are. Now if I click play, much darker. Yeah, that's a bit better. I'm preferring that. Okay, and let's do a quick dirty build. So I'm going to stop my build because I pressed the wrong button. Go to my build options, lighting quality. It's not very big, so I'll just go straight to production level. I don't need to use an importance volume right now, I don't think, so build. The error on my map is that obviously my lighting is not constructed, just in case you were wondering. Okay, lighting build is completed, it says, which seems a little bit unlikely. Apply. Oh no, it is built, so that's good. Okay, so play from here, and we'll see the eye adaptation starts to kick in. And our very simple heavy bloom and all our lighting artifacts. Beautiful. Okay, so this is a very badly lit scene, but I will live. I will persevere, and I will make it better. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on more light. So if I go to my rectangle lights, I want them to be in front of these windows here. Oof. And I could do with having some sort of blind over it as well. So I'm pretty sure if I go to my building meshes, no, I want my meshes, here we are, SM blinds. Let's have a look at these. So that's a blind. It currently has no material applied to it whatsoever, so that's fine. Looks about the right size, doesn't it? I'm going to move this over to here. Teeny bit small, I think, we'll decide. So just crank it up a little bit, maybe about 1.5 times its normal. And down, there we are, and across. Let's see, now these are a bit wide, so if I turn off my link, yep, so 1.45, that should do it, 1.45, let's have a look at our meshes, they're okay, so I'm going to grab them, and Shift and Alt, and I'm going to drag. And again, Shift Alt, and one more time, Shift Alt. And if I open my SM Blinds 01, at the minute I can see I've got no textures coming in. So if I go into my materials for blend, there we go. I had a feeling I'd find this. So blind 1. I'll just start throwing these into the various slots. save. There we go. So all of them should now have this. Oh my god. So that would explain where the emissive light was coming from. It was the blind materials. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, it's the blinds material. Let's go to its main one. This is ooh, yeah, that's the one. Okay. So now we can kind of start to see where that was. I'm going to go Control S, because this is just extremely washed out. Now, if I was to drop my blind down, I'll go back into this. It's doing an intensity of 300. Eesh. Let's just bring that down to 15 for the moment. So basically what it's doing is it's trying to imitate the effect of the sun bouncing through these blinds, but it's doing it so bloody brightly. There we go. So if I just set it to 1, save. Aha, that's it. So my blinds now are less blinding. See what I did there? Okay, now I'm going to just rotate this 90 degrees and bring this across and in. Okay, so just make sure these are filling the space correctly. There we go. Okay, so we have that now, and if you recall, I said I want to hide some of these artifacts. I may as well, otherwise our room looks a bit mad, so even with good quality lighting. There we are. Lovely. Okay, so move this one over and this one over as well. There. Okay, so now if I do a build, that's very kind of you, advert man, but I don't want to follow your advert, because the only followers I'll get will be, well, no bloody use to me, really, will they? Okay, we're still building lighting. As you can see, there's a little bit of work for it to do. Especially now our scene isn't just blown out using the overblown bloomin' emissives from the blinds. Won't take long. Like I say, I just want to make sure that we get a reasonable output from this. I'd like to be able to do a fallback scene using, you know, our assembling skills. This is a really dirty scene, by the way, this tutorial one. What's happened is I think someone's created it and basically just given a really broken down, dirty version of it. By the way, if the person who made this is watching, sorry, but it is dirty. It's like filthy, in fact. Okay, let me have a look. So, now we can see, excellent, our scene is good and dark. So, save, Control S, and I'm going to save as. I'm going to call this workroom underscore basic build 1, just so that I know what it is. Difference being that I'm getting 100 frames per second, not that bloody thing that I got before. I need to rebuild my reflection captures. It's right, so I'm going to get a sphere reflection capture in my scene. Oh, I've already got one. You see that? There we go. So I can now rebuild my reflection captures. Lighting quality production, high, medium, build reflection captures. Build lighting only, lighting quality production, blah 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 blah. Geometry build. I'm just checking I've got everything here. Yeah, we're fine. Okay. Didn't apply the lighting to my build when it was finished, which is why everything says preview. Things you have to do in order to try and help your students learn in a reasonable manner. This is my day off. But I don't care. At least I'm not screwing up in front of people this time. Ooh. Shoulder's a bit stiff. The actual base scenes that I got to officially teach with are poo. There's one that won't even load up on a 2080. I mean, what exactly the architecture on that scene is, I have no idea. But it must have been absolutely insane. I can kind of understand why the other scenes being used with its dynamic lighting, but that isn't the point. It's not a realistic use of our time. If I have to actually build one manually, then I'm going to. Yep. Okay, so this is our hideously dark, blown out scene. I think this could be probably a good place to start. Okay, so what I need to do, just in case anyone's still watching, and I think a few people are, so I'm going to go over what I need to do first, okay? So, if I come out of here, you can see this is our geometry, and it is VV dark. Now, I'm going to stick a light in here. Okay, and the light I'm going to use is just a standard basic rectangle light, which I'm going to put over these windows. So if I go to my lights and rectangle lights here, okay, and the first thing I want to do is change my barn door angle to 90, barn door length to 0, and I'm going to resize these so these are the size of my window. So turn this around, whee, 180 degrees. And now I'm going to just mess around with the sizes. So source height to something suitable, about there. Source width to, again, something suitable, so about there. Okay, and I can make these movable for the moment, so I don't need to bake them. and this will give me a good approximation of kind of what's going on in my scene. Now for the intensity, I'm going to change these up to maybe 32 candles and just shoot them across like this. So I'm just holding Alt and copying. So I've got 4 instances of this material, and the idea is I'm just trying to keep my FPS as high as I can. Okay, this is why I'm building this scene myself. I'm going to do it over here as well. I'm going to pop this into there. Okay. I can see that these blinds probably could do with being pushed back as well. So there, that's a little bit better, and then we don't get the weird shadowing going on. Now, let me find my rectangular lights and make sure they're pushing the right way. And they weren't. What a surprise. There we go. I mean, that's there. Now, I don't have a point light at the moment, but I will. And I'm going to bring in a skylight into the middle of my scene, like so. Just to adjust my lighting there. Now, the lighting I'm interested in is in the main area. So I'm going to go to my volumes. And I want a light mass importance volume, which I'm going to pop there. And I'm just going to drag it to the middle of my scene. Now, I could obviously have this over everything, but I think that would be a very, very bad idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this so that it's only grabbing the stuff inside of my apartment. And I want to make sure it gets the walls as well. There we go. Now I'm going to widen it all the way to that alcove over there, and then I'm going to increase the height of it. Now, if you saw before, our build times did take a bit of a hit, so hopefully this should stop that happening. Let's come out, and there we go. So, very basic scene is what we need. So, now if I do my lighting rebuild, and I think it took me about 2 minutes last time to do my lighting rebuild, so this time should take a little bit less. I'll soon know when I watch the number clamber up. Yeah, that's a little bit faster. Like I say, obviously, the more stuff we're doing in our scene, and the more geometry you have, and the more lighting you have, and the more complex the lighting is, the longer this takes. I think I should get myself another coffee. Right, where was I? Apart from drinking coffee. Right, so I've got multiple skylights active. That's silly, I shouldn't have that. So I'll delete my first skylight and just use my second one. There we go. And now if I come into play, my lighting's horrible, everything's horrible. There's only very basic lights in my scene. Perfect. Okay, now I need some horrible furniture, so I'm going to do some stuff with the floors first. So if I go into my starters, again I'll starter content, and I want materials, and PBR materials really greatly affect how stuff looks, so I'm just going to use some ceramic tiles on the floor. And it'll take just a moment or two to build. You'll see my FPS drops like a stone. However, it's effective. There we go. So I'll put some ceramics over there as well, if I haven't already. And over here. And you can see our reflection capture now is doing what it's supposed to. Now this is interesting. This white door, is this emissive too? I don't know why it's emitting like this. Where's its parent? Well, there's nothing in the emissive, at least, that I can see. Makes a nice change. Go figure. Maybe they just glow for the heck of it. Well, not for long, because you're getting basic wall applied to you. Ooh, look at that. Still glowing like crazy. Mad. Okay, now if I come in here, I've got some walls over here, and I'm just going to change the look of these a little bit as well. I think they're a bit dark actually. I might just keep this like shiny wall going on. Yeah, I'll keep the shiny wall going on. Okay, so floor, this corner here, obviously VV dark, so I need something in it. Let's see what I've got in my assets. No, in my meshes, yes. And over here I should have a lamp or something. In theory, there's a coat rack. Fans, I'm not using fans. I don't need that kind of dynamism. Okay, well, looks like I'm going to starter content then. And in starter content, I'm going to go to my blueprints, and I'm just going to get a blueprinted wall sconce out and just put it here. Simply because it exists already, I might as well use it. And I know it doesn't go with the architectural look and feel of the building, but you know what? Who cares? Maybe it belongs to a mad person. Okay, I'm going to use Alt and Shift and just drag it along. Stick it in the middle of these, like that. And then in this corner here, where it's most dark, I think what I'm going to do is maybe hang a light. So, there we go. Blueprint, ceiling light. I can just come in over here, and then I can have a table or something. And if I have two, then, you know, that's a very studio look, isn't it? And two lights. Okay, I'm going to get this texture here and just put it there as well. Nice. Okay, this seems to be working okay for what I want. So next, what I need is some terrible furniture. I think I'm probably just going to use... I would use the starter stuff, but it really is horrible. So let's go to meshes here and see if there's a table. Yep, here we are, SM dining table. I'll just drag that in. And I like how it's not zeroed at all. That's very helpful. And on top of that, maybe a chair. So again, I'm just dragging these into position. Okay, that gives us two more unbuilt objects. Let's do it again. And then maybe some stuff on this table as well. There we go, you can have a book on it. Just balanced on its end. That's what all cookie cutter games in the world look like. Unfurnished rooms. But that'll do us. Okay, so if I'm going to play now, I have my basic lighting set up. This weird warm lighting that comes in that I hate. So I'm going to get rid of you, and you, and you. Go away, fly. No one wants you here. So go away, fly. I don't want you here. I'm going to see if there's a lamp or light. Here we are, SM hanging light. I'm going to use this instead. And get rid of these. 1, 2. And if I just right click and place actor, spotlight, drag that down. There we go. Never place it exactly how I want it, but I don't care. Okay, and now I'll change my intensity again. Just pull that up. Change my light color to a little bit of a hint of color onto it. My attenuation radius doesn't need to be huge, so about that. My inner cone to about there, and my outer cone to about there. Source radius, definitely need to clink that up a bit, just that it comes around the light. There we go, and down. And that'll illuminate things. 16 should be enough, good and stock. Okay, so now I can build my lighting again. Build. Oh, stretch my back. Hello, Ocknod. How's it going? You're all boosted. Must be fascinating for you too. Have you reached the stage now where your gentleman parts dangle in the toilet when you go to the loo? It's it's great being old. Although to be fair, I really quite enjoy it. Being old. I'm like 48 now. God. I hope Crystal is well, and I hope you are well. It's all part of the joys of age, my old son. Although I think you're quite a bit younger than I am, from what I remember. Hey man, how's it going, RedFX? Sorry, RSDFX. Oh, it's oh, what was it again? God Almighty. Yeah, I was talking to Ricardo, and Ricardo's like, I think he's in his mid-30s now, and of course he first came to Palace back when he was like 14 or something. It's like, Christ, we're all old. You know, 3D was like cutting edge and exciting back when we first started. And now it's like we're all really, really old. Yeah. It's weird. Once I hit the 4s, I didn't care anymore. 33 is it, Rick? Jeez. Yeah, once I hit 30, once I hit like 40, I stopped giving a shit. It was amazing. Oh god, yeah, BattleBots. BattleBots are the tits. I tell you what's really interesting is that, like, I've had no interest in 3D Palace tutorials for so many years because people just stopped caring, which I understand. They are pretty boring if you're not into that kind of thing. But then there was this sudden thing where I discovered 3D printing, and like, they don't want the tutorials. They're not interested in it. They just want the models to print. So, dude, you got up at 6:30 in the morning to watch tutorials for Unreal. You poor man. I've got to go back to the original scene after this because tomorrow I'm teaching 2 sets of classes for architects. Well, archviz types, and I think one's at 9 o'clock in the morning my time, and one's at like 1 PM my time. This is why I'm drinking so much coffee at the minute, actually. It's because, like, I just freebase on coffee constantly. Yeah, well, that's it. Unreal Engine's like became my niche without me even realising it. I'm teaching with there's this official thing that Unreal Engine's doing at the moment, where they're doing like free education for people around the world just to get them using it, which is mostly focused towards like big businesses. And I was brought on as one of the official trainers for that. So I'm training in Europe, mostly I'm training Germany, the Netherlands, France, and places around there. I think I'm also doing kind of Denmark, Norway, places like that too. And it's stuff that I would have considered. I mean, I've been using Unreal Engine now for 6 years, and even though I'm making my own games and stuff in it, which is great fun, I'm not rushing them. This teaching gig's just great, and then next year Unreal Engine 5 comes out, and Unreal Engine 5 is going to be absolutely incredible. Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, like from my past, I always gave myself a choice. It was going to be like 3ds Max or Maya, and then when the game engines came out, I had a look at. I'd already been using UDK, and so I had a look at Unreal Engine 4 when it came out, and I looked at Unity, and I'd started using Unity at first. Oh, I agree, Dennis. It definitely will. I'd started using Unreal Engine 4, I mean Unity first, but I didn't really like the interface in the same way that I didn't really like the interface with Maya. And so I thought, well, sod it, I'll use Unreal Engine this time. I was actually considering for a very brief period using Lumberyard. But anyway, I was with, oh god, yeah, Unreal's making like good bank, even if they are pissing off Apple. But what was I saying? Christ almighty. You see, this late 40s, your memory gets shot. The thing with billions of polygons is interesting, actually, Dennis. I'll go over that in a second. I'll just see what Ocknod says. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, obviously you can buy out Unity, whereas you can't really do that with Unreal Engine. You're always going to be paying the money once you hit a threshold. The well, I'm not saying bad things about Lumberyard. Basically, the problem with Lumberyard was that I didn't think it'd get very much support, and lo and behold, it didn't get very much support. So no one was really very surprised there, to be quite honest. I know it's still going, but it's not the best thing to kind of learn. I know a couple of guys I know who were teaching stuff on that, you know, and it's very interesting. It's a really, really powerful engine, but at the same time, it's not what I'd be using. Yeah, I don't think this scene that I'm using here is going to work for the students tomorrow, unfortunately. 3ds Max, man. I do love 3ds Max. I hate teaching 3ds Max because, like, you know, no one seems to want to learn it. But yeah, that's what it is. It's the Crytek engine, Rick. It's there isn't a whole lot of support for it anymore, unfortunately, which is a shame. Like I say, it would have done well, but I think what happened was, like, everyone jumped on board to, like, start teaching how to do stuff in Unity and things like that. I mean, at first I did some very basic tutorials for Unreal Engine myself, and when it comes down to it, I mean, you know, most of what I do is hard surface stuff in 3ds Max just carries straight across to bloody Unity. Not Unity, Unreal Engine and Unity. So it was kind of easy for me to walk into it. But I was saying to some students yesterday, part of the problem is it's a bit like if you're used to modelling inside of 3ds Max, you know yourself, like, we use this many tools, like not many in the vast panoply of stuff there is. And so when I look at, like, Unreal Engine, I'm kind of doing the same, and then I've got to teach, oh god, I've got to teach production again tomorrow. And what always gets me is that, you know, I'm teaching production and rendering, and it's very much WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And, you know, you can just hit F9. There we go. And now I've rendered. And so at first I was like, well, how do I expand this into a 2-hour set on how to make, like, pretty renders? But, of course, there's a little bit more to it than that. And so I've got to take you through all of the stuff. Yeah, we've got that actually as well with the Unreal Engine Marketplace. If I just click on that and go over here, we do have a pretty robust and broad marketplace, and like the Unity one, you know, there's absolute garbage and there's good stuff depending on what you're looking for. With me, I mean, I've got quite a lot of stuff anyway in my library, but there's always specific things that I'm looking for, so I tend to look for good deals on mocap because I can't afford a mocap suit, for example. The things that I've been particularly interested in lately, if I go to my own library, are the water plugins, and I've been using, because water's great but obviously requires so much maths, but I've been using Waterline Pro. I've got a nagging suspicion that it's gonna, hey, a Monster Torrent, or Monstero Torrent. Montero Torrent? Oh, Montero Torrent. Oh, cheers, man. I'm colourblind, so my wife does all the decorating. And she loves pink and purple. And I cannot see pink and purple. Go figure. Yeah, this is the water sim, and it's really, really nice. I use that on my own game. And it's really, really excellent because obviously it allows for ripples and interaction and physics and all that kind of cool thing. I think I paid like $60 or $70 for it. Well, you kind of have to, really. The problem I've got is I'm explaining lighting, but at the same time, I don't have good color vision, so it does cause a few problems. Okay, so this is a good place to start. Okay, I'll go over with you what I'm going to be going over with the students tomorrow. So I've baked my lighting into my scene, which took flipping ages, and I'm going to just save that. Okay, now, the fundamentals to having a scene are obviously having a little bit of camera work in our scene. I'm going to change the speed of my camera just up here in the top right, and I'm going to drop that down to about 3. Now, yeah, exactly. F9, smash. F11, smash. What I'm going to do is, you guys are going to be rowdier than the average kind of crew that I get, who have all came in to quietly learn as an office, I'd imagine, so that's absolutely fine with me. You knock yourselves out, guys. I'm going to apply a material to the ceiling because we've only got this horrible default one. I know what I'm like, I'll just get caught up otherwise and not want to continue. So, materials in my starter content. Anyone? At the minute this is baked lighting. The problem I've got, Dennis, is that I'm only using a 1060. My computer's actually slower than the ones that my students are learning from at the centre in the Netherlands, and because of that, obviously I can't use a lot of the ray tracing features at the minute. I'm going to try and enable as many as I can, but obviously that really smashes my my render right down. It smashes my FPS right down and makes things a little bit tricky. Right, I'm going to use, I don't want concrete. What do tiles look like on the ceiling? Ooh, clinical. I like it. I like it. Don't want to use it, but I like it. Right, I'm just going to use this basic flipping wall here. I'm going to drag it to the ceiling. Because, just in case you don't know, my little chickadees and my lovelies, Unreal Engine, okay, and its lighting system uses a PBR model. And a PBR model means that it is looking for roughness, metallic, glossiness or specular, and a base colour. And as long as it has those, it will accurately and physically represent what is in our scene. Isn't that lovely? Right, now, I suppose a couple of things that I can quickly talk about while I'm here are, you can see we've got these really, really dark edges down here. Okay, now I'm going to fix these in post, and this is a great thing you can say. I always used to hear this when I was a younger artist. It's like, oh, we'll fix that in post, but literally that's what we do nowadays. We're going to find these dark corners and we're going to like really lighten them up and mess around with the balances and just get things looking cool. Okay, so in order for that to happen, what we need is we need a volume. So if I go to my volumes here and I check I've got a post, I should have a post process. Haven't got one yet, so if I just scroll down here to post process volume, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the same size as my room. Now I could have this unbound, but I'm not going to. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually scale my post process volume. Now how this works is that inside of this volume, if we are in it, it will enable any of the effects that we put in to take place. So, you know, we want to mess around with bloom, we can mess around with bloom. We want to mess around with, you know, our really complicated light and stuff, we can mess around with that too. So, like I say, all I'm interested in is getting it so that it's around my main room. I'm not really so interested in this one down here. And I don't think I'm even going to throw a light down. Okay, now, what you may have noticed there, okay, is that things kind of lightened up. And the reason things lighten up is because we've got eye adaptation going on. Eye adaptation is basically when you walk into a dark room and your pupil slowly widens and more light comes in. or if you've done like, you know, an entire bag of acid. Now, Unreal Engine automatically turns this stuff on by default. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to turn this stuff off by default. So if I go over to my edit up in the top left, and I want to come down to my project settings. Now, a lot of what we do when we're generating our nice lighting is we're doing a lot of tweaking, and we're working behind the scenes an awful lot with things like this, which is our basically feeding into our ini files, yeah? And do shout if you're falling asleep, and I'll put up some pictures of kittens or something. I'll get some prepped in the next window. Anyway, what we're going to do is I'm going to go to Engine Rendering. Okay, and in my engine rendering I can now turn on and turn off various features. So I'm going to come down here, and here we are. I'm going to look at my lighting, allow static lighting, use normal maps for static lighting, so that's an option too. I don't want to generate mesh distance fields. That would be useful for things, again, if I was using water and stuff like that. SSGI, Screenspace Space Global Illumination, we'd use that if we were using objects to illuminate our scene. And I might put that on anyway, so I'm going to click yes. Okay, now going down here, default settings, I'm going to turn off my bloom, my ambient occlusion, static fraction, let's leave that on. I'm going to turn off auto exposure, and I think that'll probably do for the minute. Render unbuilt preview shadows in game, yeah, solid. Okay, so that looks all okay, and now if I come in, you'll see that things look a bit brighter in the bright areas and dark in the dark areas. Save current. Now, we're inside of this post-process volume, if you remember still. And if I go outside of my post-process volume, you'll see not a lot's happening, okay? Now, I could make this affect my entire level, as I've mentioned previous times, just by searching for the unbound, and that will affect the entire world. But the whole point of the post-process volume, when it comes to what we're doing here, is basically finding a way of getting our lighting in various areas a little bit more snappy. You know, getting the shoulder, and, you know, all those kind of things really boosted up. Now, we're not going to mess around at the minute with things like our depth of field and stuff. I don't have a camera in, there's really no point. So let's go down and just start doing some simple things. And for this, I'm going to find a nice corner. Here we are. And if you look here, we've got straight away, if I just reduce my mobile depth of field just to get the stuff out, we've got our bloom. And I'm just going to tick all three of these. Now, at the minute we're using standard bloom, okay, and what I want is, obviously, that's alright Dennis, it's great seeing you, and there will be a recording of this, so I'll throw it up if you want to have a look at it later on, matey pops. Meantime, you take care. Okay, so bloom. In method, what I want to do is, I want to go to convolution, which is intended for cinematics. It's far, far, far too heavy to use in a game at the moment, although with the 2080s, it might not be. Now, if you look, my FPS took a little bit of a tumble straight away, 40 frames straight down. Okay, now what we can do with this is, this allows us to use convolution kernels, okay, and what this does is it replaces the basic bloom kernel that we're using to give us different kind of bloom effects. So if I search in here, I should have, here we are, our default bloom kernel, and I'll just throw that in for the moment. And then what we can do is we can do things like change our scale and our intensity and stuff on our bloom. Now at the minute our bloom is kept down because we've got what looks a little bit like a kind of a cloudy day going on. So I'm going to increase the amount of shine coming into my blinds. If you remember, our blinds were emitting, so I'm going to go over here to browse to MI blind 1, and then I'll go to its parent, and under its parent I'm going to change its intensity to something a bit higher, so maybe 5. And just see how that looks. There, we're getting a lot more bloom, maybe 10. So now our day's becoming a lot brighter outside, and what it looks like is that our blinds are basically absorbing a lot of the light as they come through, which is what blinds do. Obviously ignore the bit at the top there, it's just the way these blinds were made. They were made wrong. Okay, so we're getting this nice bit of bloom coming in now. Now if I was to go into my post-process volume, and you'll notice I can change things like my scale on my advanced. So if I want to just scale up a little bit, I can. I'm going to go down here now and I'm going to look at my metering mode for my exposure. Now at the moment we're on the auto exposure histogram. We can also switch to the auto exposure basic, but auto exposure histogram is fine by me. And what I can do is now I can start messing around just with my exposure component. Now it defaults to 1, okay, and what I'm looking for, okay, is to basically make a little bit of adjustment to this. So maybe about 0.74. So that just brings down our darker areas a little bit and compensates a bit more for our exposure. I'm not applying this physical camera and I'm not putting any materials into here. Now I also have my minimum and maximum EVs, and if you're a camera buff you may want to change this. Now if you mouse over it, if you're not sure what it is, okay, auto exposure minimum adaptation. Adaptation is disabled if minimum is equal to maximum. So this is where we start getting our adaptation. So if I set it to 0 and then 0, okay, we get a lot less adaptation, as you can see. And if I start cranking this up again and this down and then step back into here, you'll see that we start getting it back on again. Now -10, -20 is the default. You're going to want to mess around with these until you get something that's kind of comfortable for you, and you can see that I'm just gently running this down until I come up with something that's going to be comfortable for me. Look at that. So I'm going to say -5 with a max EV of 15. Oh, that's 156. That's not what I want. And we can change the speed up and speed down a little bit, so the speed with which we're transitioning between the two areas if we want. So if we find that's a little bit slow, maybe make that 1.5 for the intersect for the coming up, and we can increase the speed coming down as well. Okay, so now our adaptation is working more manually for what we want. Okay, so I'm not going to mess around with the advanced at the minute, but over here we have chromic aberration, which is a lovely term, I think you'll agree. What this allows us to do is obviously do a little bit of changing to that as well. Chromatic aberration is... I can't even remember what it is because I've had too many coffees. But there you go, chromatic aberration if you want to play with it. Anyway, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this dirt mask. And dirt masks are great if we want to throw up a little bit of... I don't know if there's any... Here we are, T-screen dirt, OW. Dirt masks are great if we want to throw up just a little bit of effect onto our camera as we're looking on it. Now one of the things that we can do is we can use a dirt mask to present information to the end user, a bit like a HUD in a very, very simple way. But mostly what we're going to use it for is basically throwing up, you know, minor imperfections, so that basically really bright areas get a little bit of scattering on them. So what I can do is I can just mess around with my intensity, as you can see. Maybe bring that up just a little bit. There we are, 1.25. And I'll tint my dirt mask, and for that I want to tint it maybe a little bit down so it's a little bit darker. There we are. So again, you know about your lighting, you know about your looks, you know about what you want. So I suggest you adjust this and adapt this any way you choose. Coffee again. Tastes like freedom. Okay. Man, I wish I could vote for coffee in our next general election in the UK. That would win by a long shot. Right, I'm not going to mess around with texture streaming, and I'm not going to mess around with ray tracing at the minute. I don't need to do anything with the LOD, and I don't need to override my materials. So let's keep going down. Ha, it would help if I was on the right thing, wouldn't it? Jesus. Right, so if we look over here where we've been messing around with, where the hell were we? Other stuff. Now I have my white balance, and obviously I might want to adjust my shadows, and I want to adjust my midtones and my highlights. So let's say, for example, if I just open up everything that I've got going on here, okay, except probably my offset, and for my main white balance here, my saturation, if I open that, and you'll notice I've got my little colour picker wheel here that I can kind of go around as well. And you can see I've got minor changes going on over here as I've kind of desaturated my scene. But I'm going to move this a little bit more towards this kind of yellowy green. Okay, so to saturate it with that and then minimize. And then for my contrast, I can literally just start adjusting my contrast. Now you remember yourselves probably, you know, when you first started off doing 3D or rendering or whatever. Contrast's a great way of obviously bringing in detail for your object, but at the same time you lose a lot of definition. So I'm going to set my contrast really low, maybe about 1.1 should be enough. So you'll notice I'm getting these darker corners, okay, where the shadows are picking up, but my contrast's picking up as well, so it's lightening it a bit. Okay, let's look at our shadows, and I'm going to open my saturation with my shadows, and again the same thing. Obviously I can crank that up and down. I'm going to decrease the saturation to about 0.95 for my shadows. And again I can do the same with my highlights and my midtones and all this kind of thing. So if I tend to work mostly in my contrast, so if I open up my contrast here, you'll see that I can really start kind of lightening up my shadows a bit if I need to manually this way. Maybe bring these down to about 0.935, and then in my midtones I'll do the same again. So I'll bring this to about 0.975. So I'm just really tweaking it, and it's only tweaked inside of this post-process volume. Okay. Now we have scene color tints just here, so I can tint the entire color of my scene. And we also have color grading LUTs. I'm not going to use an LUT at the minute because I want to just focus on what we're doing at the moment with our post-process volume. So one of the things now that I want to have a bit of a mess around with is this. This is our film level stuff. So this is our slope, our toe, our shoulder, and our back clip and wide clip. Now, if you're remembering the old way I used to do 3D Palace tutorials, this may surprise you because I now use notes. Isn't that wonderful? So let's see. Here we are. So filmic tone mapper. Okay. So slope, toe, shoulder. Slope, toe, shoulder. Okay, and what this is going to allow us to do is basically do a little bit of refining on the shadows in the corner of our scene, just to bring them up so we get a little bit more definition to it. And remember, it's all smoke and mirrors. Okay, now if I go over to this side of my scene, and I haven't textured that chair yet, I'm going to pick this because I've got some gnarly little shadows going on in the corner here, and I'm going to open up my slope, my toe, and my shoulder. And if you start just messing around with these, straight away you'll notice that, you know, we can literally wash our scene out without thinking about it. Now what I'm interested in is bringing up my toe a little bit to add a little bit more definition, and then maybe dropping my shoulder just a teeny bit. And if you can't remember what your defaults are, just press default and it'll come back. So I'm going to take this to about 0.18. Okay, there we go, just whatever's going to work for you. And I know the wall's a little bit patchy and dirty, but that's just the way it is. Okay, so we've got our bloom coming in our windows. That all looks super nice. Our floors are reflected. That is also super nice. Big empty room. Okay, let us continue down here. So now, I'm not going to use an ambient cube map, but under ambient occlusion, I can obviously change our AO. And if I come back here again, obviously you can see that what I've built in for our EV with our light adaptation is kicking in nicely. So if I just mess around with the intensity and the radius, you can see not a lot's happening. That's fine, we have a lot of our values pretty much clamped now through this. But I might want to increase the intensity of my ambient occlusion here. And that will affect obviously how much the light affects it after a non-base pass. Now, I don't want to change anything else down here at the minute because I'm just doing the basics. But I can also turn on ray traced ambient occlusion, and I can adjust my samples per pixel if I want to do that. Okay, I'm going to keep it on 1 for many reasons, not least of which is my poor frames per second. But you'll notice when I turn it on, I'm getting like these weird artifacts coming on. This happens a lot. Don't worry about it. We're really starting to get there with this scene. Okay, indirect lighting, okay, which is set to 111, which is 111 its default. So we can disable our GI if we want to, or we can basically act as a switch between it being all the way on and all the way off. Again, something I'm not really interested in. And then finally, ray tracing, global illumination, and I can use, you know, brute force and final gather and all that wonderful stuff that you may remember from your own renderers. Okay, so I'll use some FG. Throw in 2 bounces. There we are. Alright, now again, like I say, no motion blur, not interested. I'm not going to go into light propagation values either. Let's keep going down. At the moment my reflections are ray tracing, which is perfect for me, and my screen space reflection is right, but again, you can tweak all of these. It's all about just getting us to a comfortable place with our scene where we think we're ready to start putting in some cameras. Okay, let's keep going down. So post-process volume settings. Its priority at the minute is 0. So this means if I've got two overlapping and I set another one to a higher priority, I can blend between the two, and you'll notice I get a blend weight. So as we move into it, it's like basically if you've got a value of 100 on one and a value of 0 on the other, it's going to slowly climb up to 100 over the blend radius. It's really, really, really cool. There are some other things in here like vignette, and it's up to you if you want to use things like vignette and stuff like that. I don't tend to use it very much at all, or if I'm going to, I'll use it on the very, very edge, because I think it looks a bit silly if overused, and you tend to find that on quite amateur video games. We've also got things like grain, which I think's pretty funky, so you can add in a little bit of grain jitter if you want. Again though, we're not making a weird video game, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, this looks fine for what I want, which is this nice basic scene. So I'm going to do a Control S and just save it off. Right, so the next thing I need to do is I'm going to look at some camera stuff. Now, at the minute, obviously, and I say this to the guys who come in who are doing presentations to clients and things like that, if we want to make a render, rendering is so easy. All we need to do is hit F11 to make our screen big, and then hit G, not H, G, that was hide, G, okay, and that gives us game view. And then in game view, all we do is we hit F9, and it will literally just capture whatever's been sent to our screen buffer. In our case, it's this, you know. So if I go over here and look at screenshot 2, you can see it's captured it at 1080p, and it's done a good enough job, you know, it's fine. Okay, so we don't really want to be just sending this to the client. You know, it's pretty enough, and this is the same for if you're doing game stuff and you're making like really nice game renders. We want to really add a level of interaction to this, especially if we're looking at things like trailers, or if we're looking at walkthroughs or things like that. So I'm going to show you how we do the very, very basics of a scene walkthrough. Now, what I want to do is hit F11, because if I've got it full screen, my God, is this going to start taking a hit, because I'm already at half the FPS that I started off with. And I want something to focus on in my scene, so I'm going to go to my generic NPC animation pack, and I've got some animations here, and this is just the laziest way I can think of doing it. I want some conversation. So do I have talking? I better do. Here we are, animation talking, animation talking. So I'll put this guy here and this lady here, and they can be talking to each other. See, equality, man. Doesn't have to be two dudes, even if one is a bit stocky. We'll have them fairly close to each other, because that implies, like, you know, a little bit of camaraderie. And now when I play this, hiya Bart, how's it going, man? When we play this, it's going to do the animations for these guys, but that still isn't really what we need or want, so let's add a little bit more to this. So let's get a cinematic going. If I go over to my content, clear all my filters over here, and I'm going to go to my assets, and this is where I keep all the stuff that I work on. Okay, I always make it an assets folder. Cinematics, right click, and I want to make a new cinematic. So for that, I'm going to go to, if I can ever remember where it is, because I always forget. Here we are, and I want a level sequence, because I want this tied just to the level we're working in. Okay, so this is visualization level sequence 1. Always give things good names so you know what they are. Okay, and I'm going to just clear my world outliner up here as well. Now, this looks like as good a place as any to start off with. So I'm going to open up my visualization level sequence. Pa-bam. And it's not long enough, okay? Fast, sharp moves aren't what you want when you're doing this kind of thing. What you want is a nice, slow, easy move. So I'm going to change this to 600, and this will give me a 600 frame length. And then I'm going to change the one next to it, my view range, to 600 as well. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just grab this and I'm going to drag this out the full length of my scene to 600, and now I can work with all of my frames, you see? Okay, now I want to create a camera, so I'm going to save my current sequence first, and then I'm going to click here, and this will create a new camera where I am. Okay, so wherever I am in the scene, whatever I'm looking at, click. Okay, so there we go. Now, I imagine, because you're all artists, whether you know it or not, okay, I'd imagine that you're seeing a couple of issues here straight away, and we'll go over those in just a second. The first one is that our lens setting, we've got it set to universal zoom, and that's zoomed right the way in. So if I change it to a 30mm component, okay, that will change us to basically using a 30mm digital film. You'll see we've got all these options over here. Now, because I'm in my cinematic, a lot of these, okay, have little add a keyframe for this properties, and this is going to be so helpful. Now, over here, I can adjust my current focal length and my aperture and all the other stuff here, and this is what I really want to get my meat into. So I'm going to rotate it so that I'm looking at, and we'll say this one here, this person here, right? And I'm going to bring my focus distance right down, and you'll have to bring it down quite a long way, to be honest, because it's set at like 100,000 for some obscure reason. And you'll notice that as I bring it in, there we go, now, there, and that's the kind of focus that I want, just behind this man or woman or person. Okay, so that's great. So I'm going to set a keyframe just here, and you'll notice that a keyframe appears just where I wanted it. Now, another thing I want to do is I want to affect my transform, and my transform obviously is my location, rotation and scale, but I want all three. So I'm just going to click here and set another keyframe. Great, so that's my start of this very simple pan. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to steer my camera. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go all the way over here to frame 600 or so. There we are. And then I'm going to steer my camera, just using the usual suspects for viewports. And I'm going to turn this around just so that I get to about here. And just keep everything kind of in frame if I can. So use the rule of thirds. So I'm going to have these occupy 2/3 of the screen, with my table occupying the last third of the screen. And I'm just going to check my manual focus distance. Oh, you'll notice I snapped straight back to there. That's not what I wanted. I need to change my key for my transform first. So if I come back here, just set this up. And remember, the height of your camera tells a story as well. Very important. So let's set it to there. Okay, so transform, create a key. And now I can adjust my manual focus. And I'm focusing on that person there. Great. Okay, and so because I've done that, I should have a key over here. I'm going to change this range to 650 so I can, oops, no, 650, so that I can see what I'm doing a bit better. There we go. So there, I've got my manual focus key just here. That's perfect. Now if I scrub back, you'll see that we're moving past these guys now in a nice smooth kind of edge. Now, we're not getting the animation from these guys because we haven't kicked off our sequence yet. But what I want to do is I want to do a little bit more just tweaking. So at frame 300, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it a little bit more and keep these in frame back up. Okay, so like that. And I just want to adjust my focus again. So bring this back. Maybe down a little bit. Now don't go with massive sweeps, okay? This isn't like 1993. We're not going with big movements. And I'm going to stick in my transform again. And now if I sweep it, there. Now what was that? Did you see it go past the screen there? There it is. Okay, so we have an error. Always check out for things like this. Very easy to get around. We'll just go forward a teeny bit. Remember, very small movements, and again I'm going to just change my transform. Okay, now let's bring this all the way back to the beginning, and I'm going to press play. And that's nice. Yeah, it's going straight past them, keeping them in focus. We've got the room behind, giving them a very stark kind of lighting there, which I like. and then it ends there. Okay, so nice and smooth, just coming around and presenting what we want to be presenting. Now we can add a little bit more dynamism and a little bit more interest to this scene. What we're going to need for that is something else in it. Now I'm going to press the eject button, and that just ejects us out of our current camera scene. Okay, so if I now drag this back and forth, you'll see it's doing stuff in the background, but we can't, you know, it's not on the main screen. If you want to get an idea of how it looks, just click pin preview. And this will be really handy because we can kind of go, aha, that's how it looks. Alright, now what I want to do is I want to put something in here that we can focus on. So if I go back to my content browser, and I've got my starter content here, which is a good place to be. If I go to my props, I'm pretty sure we have like some sort of a plant or something. Here we are. Let's use this yellow table, okay? Now it's going to want to cook this because my lighting isn't built. But I'm not going to build it just yet. What I want to do is just get this into a good place. And I'm going to maybe bring this over to here, because I want it more or less between where the two talking people are and the camera's going to be. And if I go to my sequencer, I can check that. So we should see, yep, there it is there. Okay, there's our table. So I'm going to move this a little bit closer. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my camera, so I'll click perspective and go to cine camera actor. I'm just going to lower it down a little bit so I get this table here, and I'm just going to click on my transform again. So now what it'll do is it'll kind of duck down a little bit towards this table and then back up here. Now the reason I want to do that is because I want something on my table. So if I just eject and go back to my content browser, and I haven't got a lot of options for what I can put on here in my basics, but I'm going to grab SM Bush, and I'm going to change its scale to about 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. Okay, so nothing complicated. And then next to that I'll put a small rock, because, you know, why not? So I'll change that to 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. Actually, I might make that 0.1 because it's a little bit big. 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. Okay, so we've got a couple of things on our table here, and what I want to do is I want to grab attention to the things on our table as we come by them, and then take it back to the people behind us. So I'm going to go to my perspective and go to my cine camera actor, and as I come past, here's my rock, and here's my bush. Now, before I even move my focus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my current focal length. I'm going to add a new key before it's changed at all. And I'm going to add another key around about here, just so that we snap back to these. So, again, current focal length there. Now, in the middle, where this is, let's focus on these just for a moment. So we'll imagine the camera's going by and it's automatically picked these up. That's a good way to do it. So I'm going to just mess around with my focal length until I get something I like. Hang on, I'm using the wrong one, aren't I? I meant this one. There we go, focal distance. Okay, and you'll see it's placed a key there because I've changed the value. So now what will happen is, as we come by these guys, it'll focus in on these and they start getting blurred in the background. And then as we come away, it sharpens our focus on these guys again. So if I just rewind everything, so I'll use to the very beginning, and you notice how it gave us that lovely bloom there, and then if I just press play, and here we go. So I think the frame works out as about, is it 20 seconds? Because it's 30 frames a second we're doing here. Okay, that's great. And then these will drop out of focus and back to there. Perfect. Okay, so that's pretty much what we want here. Really basic, but it's what we want. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit, if I just close my sequencer for the moment, because obviously it's working the way I want. We're going to talk a little bit about post-process materials, because I need to make a post-process material. Now, this is where things get a little bit more fun and technical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here into my little down arrow, and I want to go to, let me see, I always forget where this is, go to buffer lot. That's it, I want to go to lit. Okay, so this is the bit where it'll say lit, unlit, etc. I want to go to buffer visualization, and I want to go to overview. Okay, so how this works is your graphics card is basically receiving all of these sent to it. So it's getting our basic color here, specular, scene depth, roughness, metallic, opacity, shading model. All of these things are being sent to your graphics card, to the G buffer. And then what your G buffer is doing is it's going, right, here's all the bits that are coming in. I just need to assemble those. It slams them all together and it produces what you see on your screen. That is a very, very basic kind of summary of what's happening. And if I just move around, you can see, obviously, we've got our scene depth, our subsurface color, our world normal, all this stuff, all blending together to make this. We do not have an awful lot of metallic, but as you can see, we do have some reflective parts that are showing up on these guys, and we've got some reflective parts on the table, so it's all here. Now, what I want to do is, I want to build a very simple shader model, and I'm going to go into my notes for this, okay, so this is going to slow down just a little bit, because I'm basically, I screwed this up yesterday a little bit, and I don't want to screw it up again. So there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a desaturated look, okay, and we're going to feed our desaturated look into our G buffer and basically pull that together. So we're going to tell a story using our what do you call it, our post-process material. And if you've seen Schindler's List, which is a great movie, you know that in Schindler's List they did that thing where they focused just, the only colour in it was the girl's red dress. Beautiful movie. Now I'm going to turn my overview off. There we go. So I'll just turn back to lit. And I'm going to go to my content and my assets and my materials. And in here I want to create a new material. And this new material is going to be a post-process. So right click, materials, okay, and this is going to be post effect, and we'll call it post effect 1 because we might want to make a whole library of them, and in fact that's not very descriptive. So post effect, and we'll call it the SL, okay, because Schindler's List. Okay, now what I want to do is open that up, and at the minute you will see what this is our very, go away fly, no one likes you except me. Well, I don't like you either, horrible thing. Right, what you'll see is we've got our material browser just here, and the only thing in it is this, which is our end node, our result node, what we're doing, okay? Now, let me just make sure I've got everything here. We've talked about the G buffer and how it's got all the render targets, okay? So what I need, God, 3 monitors, nightmare. What I need to do now is blah, 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 material, blah. 93 pages of notes, by the way. 93. Give me a second. Right, so I've talked about the G buffer. I could pick roughness and view roughness, obviously, if I wanted to. Right, so what I want to do is I want to use our roughness G buffer as the final output in the viewport. Okay, so let me look how I do this again, because it's been a few minutes. Give me a minute. Right, so what I need to do, notes man, notes. I'm just going to open a document up on my other window because I need to shorten my notes I've got for this, okay, on making post-process materials. This is one of the reasons why I'm doing kind of a dry run class today. So if you're feeling a bit bored and you're thinking, oh God, Chris is waffling, this is probably why, okay, I have to do this, just so that I know that I'm getting stuff right. So I want to just refine my stuff. Right, if I close down my material anyway, and what I need to do is I need to go into my post-process material, and I want to put an array in. So I really wish it was easier to choose between my monitors. I might set up a hotkey. Choose the post-process material. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just making notes to myself on what I'm doing here. I used to do it all the time in Macs, but it's a lot easier because I repeated a lot of stuff in Macs, so just in case you're wondering. Post-process. There it is here. Okay, so if I go down in this, and I'm going to look for our material that we need to add in. So scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Keep scrolling down literally forever. There's our color grading, that's a start. But what we want is under rendering features, post-process materials. Okay, so what we're going to do is we can add multiple amounts of these, but what I'm doing is I'm basically trying to streamline the way I'm teaching this tomorrow. Now what you want to do is, under the array here, you want to click add to add an element, and you'll get two to choose from, and we're going to choose an asset reference. Okay, now we don't have our asset ready yet, but we will have once I've built it. Okay, going back to, I'm going to pull my other notes right across here so that I can see them a little bit easier. Okay, so I've got two sets of notes open. I can't see the chat, so this is your chance to type really rude things to me. Okay, so we need to plug a material into this, okay, and what I can do is I can literally just get our post effect, which is doing nothing, and throw it in there, and it'll still do nothing because there's nothing happening in here. Now, pardon me, with our new material, okay, which is our highlight, we're going to make this into a post-process material. So if I go over here, and I'm going to make my screen nice and big. And I had so many embarrassing mistakes I made doing this, which is, again, why I'm doing this, but we want post-process. And if I do that, you'll see the only thing we get in here now is our emissive colour. That's the only thing it's interested in, okay? Okay, so now what we need is a scene texture. So if I go into here and type in scene, and you can see here, scene texture, okay? And in this, I'm going to take the output, which is our colour, and stick it into emissive. Now, when I do this, error, okay, big error. And it's because we haven't actually assigned anything here. So I'm going to assign the roughness. And there we go. If I assign the roughness, we get this kind of black and white kind of look going on here. And I'm going to save. And now if we come to our scene, you'll see that we've got this really, really, really flat and slightly jerky scene going on, okay, because it's just taking our roughness into here. And we've got various different inputs that we could use as well. I'll just move this over here so you can kind of see it a little better. So as well as roughness, you know, we could have our scene depth, or, well, that's scene color actually, hang on, scene depth. There we go, it kind of blows out our scene a bit. Or our base color, and our base color is going to be very flat. There we go. So there you go, that's our base colour, okay? Now, changed our material domain. When we looked at the buffer visualization overview, you saw all the different G buffers, like metallic opacity and so on. Now, what we want to do is change the scene texture ID to post-process input 0. So basically this is going to give us how the screen looks when it's all being merged together. So this is the final output, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to use the color output here to desaturate it. So if I go over here to my, and I should be able to find it. Ha, that's not it. Although it is pretty if I just apply it. Pretty, you know, everything's red kind of way. Now then, the one I need to add is my post-process. There we go, post-process input 1. And now I can desaturate this. So if we go to the color output, and I desaturate, okay, and then I pull that instead into my emissive color. Okay, so that goes in there. Okay, I just want to make sure I've got this right. My scene texture is set to post-processing input 0. This is how I put together lessons, by the way. And then I've done a desaturate from the color node to emissive. Okay, and I've already saved this, so with any luck we should start getting a desaturated look. Let's see what the desaturation node is doing here. Now then, I want to promote this to a parameter, and let's see what I can do just to change the value coming into this. There, okay, so that's desaturated now. So I'll make a note again. Add a parameter scalar coming into the desaturation. You see, what you're seeing here is like, my favourite comedian is a guy called Stuart Lee, and he does this all the time. Basically, he puts together little concerts and he runs roughshod through the stuff that he's been working on, and then tightens up and tightens up and tightens it up. And so having people there doing it really does like tighten your focus, which is great. Okay, so save. So we've desaturated our scene, but we could have done that really in our post process. So that's not the important thing. What we want to do now is be able to what do you call it? Choose parts of this scene that we don't want to desaturate. So let me see. So what I might want to do is highlight an object that I'm going to do this with. And this is page 78 of my notes, incidentally, just in case you were wondering, which is another reason why this takes so long. So choosing the item that will have lovely colour. I'm hoping to be able to get my notes down to one page based on being able to remember everything else. Okay, so in order to make use of, we need to make use of the custom stencil buffer. So for that, we need to enable it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to post-processing. I mean engine and then rendering, sorry. So edit, and then project settings, and it'll bring up the big screen, and then rendering. Okay, and I'll just make sure that I've kept a note that I need to change this as well. Okay, and what I'm looking for is the stencil buffer. So if I just look down here until I find it, it's going to be a chance to have a bit rest as well, which is nice. Custom depth stencil pass enabled with stencil. Custom depth with temporal AA jitter, and enable alpha channel support in post-processing. So it looks like I've already got this enabled, which is good. So I'll have this enabled with stencil. And I'll make a note. It's because of the scene I'm using, but it'll already be set up with that anyway. Okay, next I want to specify which item I'm going to use. So If I just close down my project settings, and again, sorry to anyone who's sitting in the background going, why is it so no responses? Okay, I'm sorry. So highlight, and what I'm going to do is, all my screens. I'm going to select this item, okay, so this dude, and I'm going to select this lady, and I'm going to select these, okay, because we want just to focus on some specific things. Then if I get my details panel, I'm going to search for custom, okay. So if I just type in search details here, and I found nothing at all, so that's really, really good. Wrong one. I wanted to select buffer. No. Oh my god, I've got it wrong again. Give me a second. I think I'm just going to select these items over here. There we go. Right. So I want to go to the details panel and look under here for custom, if I can find it. Yeah, there we go, custom. And right, so now we can see we've got rendering and render custom depth pass. So we're going to enable that with a checkbox, and we need to specify a custom depth stencil value. So I'm going to put a value of 1, okay. Right. Now, if I go to my view options in my viewport, now that I've done this, what I can do is, if I just save, I can go down to my buffer visualization, and you'll see that I've got some additional stuff that I should be able to look at here now. So what I'm looking for is custom stencil, and there, this will show me just these plants, because obviously these ones have an ID of 1 and they're using the custom depth pass. Okay, that's great, that means they are working. So what I need to do now is I can use this in my material. So I'm going to turn off my custom stencil and just go back to lit. And because I'm inside of my volume, you'll see everything's black and white. As I come out of it, it becomes colour again. Remember that. Now I want just these to be coloured, so I'm going to go into my Post Effect SL. Okay, and what I need to do for this to show up is use another scene texture. So I'm just going to move these over to here, and in my scene texture I'm going to make a new one, scene texture. Now the input or ID for this one is going to be our stencil. So if I find our custom stencil here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that as a mask. Okay, so I'm going to apply colour on just the objects that have the mask for the custom stencil. So for this I'm going to use a linear interpolate. So if I hold down L and click, and I feed my output of this into my alpha, and then I feed my desaturated into my A, and my saturated into my B. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click save. Okay, let's have a look at this now and see how we're doing. Still black and white. Looks like I need to fix a couple of things up on this. So I'm going to take some notes. Don't worry, I'm nearly done, I promise you. I'm nearly done. Because I have been here for a very long time. Hours, in fact. Okay, so render custom depth pass, stencil value of 1. Go back into material and add a new scene texture with custom stencil as the input. Okay, lerp, and add the custom stencil as the lerp alpha with the desaturated as A in my lerp. Right, now I want the color output version of the scene plugged into my B input of my lerp. At the minute I'm just pulling down this. So I also want to output my lerp into here, because this is a fun mistake I made the other day. Okay, so coercion failed. Material float local 3 equals lerp, blah, 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 blah. So let's see what error we're getting here. I'll put this into here. Yep, it's the coercion failed, local 3 RGBA. It's expecting a float 4 value. Okay, so I would ideally need to change the output of this. Let's see. Christ almighty. This should be outputting as the data. Let's see if I can output this. It's already connected, so this alpha here and this color aren't right. Need to be able to fill this into there. Let's try that. And save. Nice. And let's put the original into B. Yeah, it's this B node here. Defaults to const B if not specified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new post-process input. Feed that straight to B there. No, it still doesn't like that. Why do you not like that? See this is what was happening the other day. Okay, so frustrating. I can hear someone's alarm going off. Right, so I'm going to have a quick look over here at this and see what I've got in my lerp wrong. So, I've got my input data, add. You know what? I had a feeling it might be an add rather than a bloody lerp. Rather embarrassingly. Yeah, let's have a look at these. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mess around over here. And hello again, Bart, even though you said hello ages ago. So what I'm going to do is just open this up, just so I can see what I'm doing on the left at the same time. I've got my desaturation obviously working. I'm going to take away my lerp node. And I'm going to use an add instead. Because that's as good a place as any to start. And it doesn't like that. Arithmetic between float 3 and float 4 are unsupported. I'm guessing this is a float 3, the desaturation on here. And if that's the case, I wonder if I can convert this to a float 4. I probably can. Let's just remove that. And put that into the emissive and see how that looks. Ooh, very red. Save. I'm going to feed it into all 4 channels. There we go. What a lovely colour. Right, so that desaturates it and makes it a 4 vector rather than making it a 3 vector. And now with that made into a float, I should, in theory, be able to do a multiply of these two, I think, just as a test. Let's have a look. Yep, okay, so this is starting to get there. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to multiply this stencil here by colour output. So I'm going to multiply this and feed it into a lerp. So take away my multiply now, make it a lerp. That goes into A, this goes into alpha. And if I just save, okay, a little bit dark because I haven't actually connected it to anything at all. Okay, starting to get there. So these are now nice and bright white, which is what I want. Okay, and now if I feed my original colour into lerp slot B, there, done it. Okay, I had a feeling there were some errors on the original one. I got a feeling it was probably made some time ago, the notes that I was originally working from. And so what I've done is, obviously I've gone in and I've converted the desaturation into a float. So for my own benefit, I'm going to go into here, and this allows me to do a lot of nice tweaking as well, which is nice, so I can really raise up or desaturate the things. So I'm going to make a note here, okay? I've got my new scene texture. So new scene texture is outputted into the alpha of my lerp. A for the lerp is input from my desaturation, which will not work as it is. Add a make float 4 to my desaturation. Output everything into it. Then output the make float to lerp. Okay, next feed in the original scene texture post processing 0 into my slot B of the lerp, and then in big letters, because I forgot this, connect it to the damn emissive. Okay, so we've got all that in. Now that I've got my notes from this as well, there's a couple of other things really that I need to just quickly look at. So, did I close down everything? I probably did. Let me just go over here. And I'm nearly done, isn't this wonderful? However, I needed to do this. Hey, Rick. It does on certain nodes, Rick. Rick's asking me why Unreal doesn't automatically insert a node between two nodes, because it's not entirely sure what I want to do. I may be doing all sorts of things with this desaturation, and I think calculating constantly which node I should automatically use to connect, it's going to start making some really bad decisions. There's a lot of different ways I can do this. Like a lot of different ways I can do this. This is just one of them as well. Like a blueprint material expert who's better at this than me will no doubt come up with many, many different ways of doing it. Right, so where's my documents? Here we are. So this is my deep dive into post-processing again. Oopsie-daisy. Oh, come on, where are we? There. So I want to check that I've got all this right. We've done our scene texture. We've made our material take effect. We've got the stuff on the table that's all glowing and looking nice. Right, tone mapping. Okay, so if we look closely at our stuff now, and you know, I just need to close this off a bit. There we go. So if we look closely at our stuff now, you may see a slight amount of ghosting. Okay, now these are very low quality images, but I mean models, but you may notice that they seem a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, oversaturated in colour than they should be, and there is possibly a little bit of an outlining on the side here that you might be able to see. Now this is the way we're rendering the effect. Now let's open up our post-process material, okay, and what I'm going to do is, if we scroll down to the post-process material here at the bottom, okay, from here you can see blendable location. So let's find blendable location. Here we are, and as you can see at the minute, our blendable location is by default being set to after tone mapping, which means it's basically being done very, very last frame of rendering the frame. Because this is the last step where we translate our HDR image into Unreal to low dynamic range displays. So we can change this using the drop down to several different locations, so we can have it before the tone mapping or even before translucency. So if you've got any depth of field with camera settings, you're probably going to want to use this before translucency. But for now we're going to use it just before tone mapping. So there we go, before tone mapping, and click save. So now if we hit save, you'll see the item would have changed a little bit. It won't be quite so bright anymore. There we go, so it's not quite so oversaturated in colour. One thing to consider when we change our blendable location in the post-process material is the effect it's going to have on other post-process effects such as lens flares. Because I'm doing the post-process material before tone mapping, it's coming before the lens flare, it's being added into the scene here, and so any lens flares we would get through or around this would be in full colour. So if we wanted to bring this lens flare back so it's desaturated, we'd need to change our blendable location again. Okay, so that's just literally, you know, all you need to do. Okay, I'm going to just add these notes to my new simpler 2-page notes. I hope. No, I've just added make float, which is weird. There we go, and I'm going to change these to the right size because I use a nice big font so that I can read what people are saying. And I'll just check my grammar so that I can read it, because if I can't read it, how can I explain it to people? By the way, Arnott, I don't know if you're still here or not, but it's been lovely seeing you, because I haven't had a chance to chat to you in so damn long. So, like I say, I hope you and Crystal are keeping very, very well. There we go. As long as we avoid talking about politics, we will be fine. Because otherwise it'll become just one big mad thing in here. Right. Okay, so now if I go back to my camera, so I'm going to go over here to my contents, assets, cinematics, visualization level 1 sequence, and I want to go into my camera, so cine camera actor, and I'm going to press play. Okay, so we can see these guys are black and white. I could change these guys to colour if I wanted to. And then as we pull back over here, the only colour thing in our scene are those, which then pull out, focus, and we get these guys again. Beautiful. Okay, that makes me happy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exit my sequence here and make sure I'm saved. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to build my scene. So if I go over here, you'll see I've got a few options, and I'll save my sequencer. I'm going to render my movie to a video or image frame sequence. Now, because I'm just making a preview, I'm just going to use a video sequence. Okay, and I'm going to just grab that there. and I don't want any audio, so video sequence AVI. I'm going to keep everything pretty much default. Capture movie. Select content to save. Yep, let's save all this. And it'll do me a preview in the top left. This won't take very long, though obviously it's building it with the post-process effects and everything else in place. So we'll get our little render preview just over here. And there's our two people happily chatting. Because remember, now that we're actually building it, any animations we put in will come in. We can add the voices here.
Yeah, I think this room's too empty. I think the room's just right. Well, I think we could do with an IKEA furniture pack. Yeah, I know, but I don't have very much money. Well, what about if we just bought a very cheap IKEA Strudenwoffel sofa and the Kniedenknopfer shelf? Yeah, I like that. We can put our colourful rock and our colourful bush on it. Oh, you're so clever, Max. I love you. I love you too.
So there we go. We have some dialogue for our two people as well. Okay, so now I can open my capture folder, and you'll see here I've got my workroom basic build 1. And there we go. They're really fucking arguing like crazy, aren't they? Let them go. No, they're not happy about the IKEA furniture thing. No, yes, no, yes. But there we go, you see? And then it focuses back on them again. Kablamo, as they say. Kablamo. So, my dear sweet princesses, I think we more or less have what we were looking for. I am going to just close this down. The last thing I'm going to do, and this is personal preference, is because this is like a beauty pass, a beauty render, I don't really want these guys talking quite so quickly. So I should be able to change my play rate to half. And now it makes them look like they're not arguing like idiots. I'll change the play rate on this one to half as well. And if I go back into this, and I'm going to reduce the size of my sequence to 1280. And capture my movie. There we go. Save selected to everything. Right, so it's appeared in the top left corner. Here we go. And yeah, well, I want the Strudenwoffel sofa. But Max, I want the Hamilton shelf. I love you, Max. I love you, Ralph. I'm glad we have a rock and a plant. So am I. There we go. And now let's have a look at our open scene that we have finished. And it should be a lot more sedate. Obviously I've rendered it in a lower resolution. But I've got these nice highlights that I really wanted here as well, so... Why is my plant so bright? I do not know, Max. Because obviously they're Scandinavian, that's why I'm doing the Scandinavian accent, okay? Okay, that is cool. You are cool, and if you watched this far, then I hope, really hope that you found something useful in this. Remember, we can turn off our volume. If I go into here and go to my post-process volume, I can turn that off. So you can see what it would look like. If I just go over here, outside my volume, and then when I come inside my volume, it's like, it's gone black and white, okay? Remember, we can do blendables as well, so I'm probably going to do some stuff on blendable now that I've got this basic scene set up the way I want it to. Okay, so with that, I'm going to build, I'm going to stop my stream, and I love you all very much. You can all give yourselves gold stars and put them on your fridge.